සුබ සන්ධ්‍යාවක්. අද විමර්ශන චින්තන පරිෂදයේ 4වැනි ජාල මන්ත්‍රණය සඳහා එක්වන අපගේ ගෞරවනීය දේශකයන් සහ ඔබ සැම ඉතාම සාදරයෙන් පිළිගන්නා ලබන මම විමර්ශන චින්තන පරිෂදයේ වෙනුවෙන් දීප්ති පෙරේරා. අද අපගේ ජාල මන්ත්‍රණය සඳහා මාතෘකාව වන්නේ අද ඉතාමත් බහුල වශයෙන් සාකච්ඡාවට ලක් වී ඇති අපගේ තරුණ පරපුරට වඩාත් වැදගත් වන කොතලාවල ජාතික ආරක්ෂක විශ්වවිද්‍යාල පනත් කෙටුම්පත පිළිබඳවයි. විමර්ශන චින්තන පරිෂදයේ අපගේ විශ්වාසය වන්නේ නම් අප 21 වන ශතවර්ෂය සඳහා ගමන් කිරීමේදී ලංකාවේ දැනට පවතින උසස් අධ්‍යාපන ක්‍රමයේ ව්‍යුහාත්මක සංස්කරණයන් සිදු විය යුතු බවයි. ඉතින් KDU පනත් කෙටුම්පත පිළිබඳව සාකච්ඡා කිරීමට අද අප සමග උසස් අධ්‍යාපන ශ්‍රේෂ්ඨයේ ප්‍රවීණයන් කීප දෙනෙක් එක්වලා සිටිනවා. ඒ සමගම අද ප්‍රධාන දේශනය පවත්වනු ලබන්නේ විමර්ශන චින්තන පරිෂදයේ අධ්‍යක්ෂකවරයෙකු වන ආචාර්ය සිසිර පින්නවල මහතා වීම අපිට ඉතාම වැදගත් කරුණක්. මේ මාතෘකාව පිළිබඳව විශාල වශයෙන් අවධානය යොමු වී තිබෙන බව අපිට පේන්න තිබෙනවා. ඉතින් ඔබ සැමදෙනාම මෙම ජාල මන්ත්‍රණයට උපරිමයෙන් දායක වෙයි කියලා අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. මේ ආරම්භ කිරීමට ප්‍රථම මම යම් කරුණු ස්වල්පයක් පැහැදිලි කරන්නම්. අපගේ දේශන අවසානයේදී Q&A session එහෙම නැත්නම් ප්‍රශ්න සහ පිළිතුරු සංවාදයක් පැවැත්වීමට නියමිතයි. එම නිසා ඔබගේ ප්‍රශ්න දැනට තිරේ මතුවලා තිබෙන Q&A කියන සලකුණ තුලින් අපට ලැබීමට සලස්වන්න. එසත් මම ඉල්ලා සිටිනවා. ඒ සමගම ඔබගේ ඊමේල් ඇඩ්‍රස් එක ඒ තුලින් අප වෙත එවුවොත් මේ පිළිබඳ වැඩිදුර තොරතුරු සහ අපගේ ඉදිරි වැඩසටහන් පිළිබඳ විස්තරද ඔබට වීමට හැකියාවක් ලැබෙනවා. අපගේ මීළඟ ජාල මන්ත්‍රණය අපි තවත් කාලීන මාතෘකාවක් වන ලංකාවේ පුනර්ජනනීය බලශක්තිය නැත්නම් renewable energy සඳහා ඉදිරි ගමන පිළිබඳව පැවැත්වීමට නියමිතයි. A very good afternoon to all of our renowned speakers and to all of the participants joining us today for the 4th webinar of the Vimansa webinar series. I am Deepthi Pereira from Vimansa Initiative and I will be your host today. Today's webinar will be on the currently much debated topic, which will be of major interest to our youth, which is on the Kotalawala National Defence University Bill, also known as the KNDU Bill. We at Vimansa Initiative, which is an independent think tank, believe that Sri Lanka's higher education system today is in dire need for some reforms to move forward in the 21st century. To discuss about the KNDU bill, we have a lineup of prominent academics with our very own director of Vimansa Initiative, Dr. Sisra Pinnawala, as the main speaker. We can see that there is a high interest for this topic, and I hope all of you will actively participate in the webinar. Before we proceed, I like to mention that there will be a Q&A session at the end of the speeches, and I would like to invite all the participants to send their questions through the chat box or the Q&A box, which is visible to you, and we would try to answer as many questions as possible. You can also leave your email address so that we can get back to you with more information and also notify about future events. Vimansa Initiative is planning to hold its next webinar on another very important current topic, a way forward for scaling up renewable energy in Sri Lanka. We hope to see you all there as well. Without further ado, let me introduce today's chair and moderator for the webinar. He is a renowned academic who doesn't need much introduction from me. He is currently the head of the Department of Economics of the University of Colombo and has wide experience working as a consultant and as a researcher with many international, national, government and corporate bodies. Let me welcome the chair and moderator today, Senior Professor Sirimal Aberathne, to take over the webinar from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepthi. Very important topic and hot topic. I know that Vimansa pick up all hot topic, timely issues of the country. And I remember we had through Vimansa debt crisis, few weeks back with the participation of the Central Bank Professor W.D. Lakshman, and after that we also had another webinar on the Port City Bill with the participation of the President's Secretary, Dr. P.B. Jayasundara. So I know that Vimansa pick up all these timely issues that are important and also that are debated in the Sri Lankan policy and political arena. So the KNDU Kotalawala National Defence University Bill. The discussion today here it is on the National Defence University Bill, and our first speaker we have, including myself, we have 4 speakers, and each one will be speaking 20 minutes. And I will be coming at the end of the line because I have to moderate this discussion as well. And also the time management is in my hand. So each speaker will get about 20 minutes maximum, and to speak both in Sinhala as well as in English, either way. Shift between the two, or you can start with English or Sinhala first and then move on to the other language accordingly. So let me introduce first Dr. Sisira Pinnawala. He is director of the Vimansa Initiative. He has also been he's also a former professor of sociology at the Peradeniya University. And Dr. Sisira, it is over.
Thank you, Professor Veratna. Said I have been given 20 minutes, of which I wish to spend about 10 minutes to speak in English and about 10 minutes in Sinhala. My topic I have selected, Kotalawala National Defence University, is the devil as black as he is painted. Maybe perhaps it implies that I want to speak only about the bill itself. But in this brief presentation, I do not wish to speak only about the bill and its merits and demerits. Instead, I want to use this opportunity to examine the broader impact of the bill in this country. I wish to use the bill to draw my attention to alternative models of higher education available to us. At the same time, I wish to respond to criticisms leveled against the bill let me also state that I am neither against the bill nor for it. Only that I do not subscribe to some populist arguments dominating the current discourse on higher education in general and also the KNDU bill in particular. I will be using the KNDU bill to refer to Kotalawala National Defence Academy throughout this discussion. Let me present a very brief history of the bill first. This bill was presented in 2018 by the previous government, and due to strong opposition from stakeholders, political parties, civil society, professional bodies, etc., etc. Then the then government decided not to proceed with the bill. The main opposition party at the time, which was against the bill at the time, is now presenting it to the parliament and wants it passed. And as it happens in this country always, the then government, now in opposition, seem to be having second thoughts about the bill, which they supported earlier. I mention this not to make a political comment, just to show that it's not the merits or demerits of the bill that is important today, but rather the political mileage different political parties can get out of it. And also, in addition to political parties, there are other groups that are opposing the bill, and they don't have any political issues or to achieve anything politically, but there are other interests, maybe personal or professional. That is the situation of the bill as I see it. Looking at the bill and the criticism level against it, there are several criticisms. We can group these criticisms primarily into two areas. The criticism is basically founded on it's leveled against the approach of the bill to delivery of higher education in the country, which is free-living education and or defense-centered higher education. Therefore, this opposition to the bill can be briefly summarized as the implications of the bill and militarization that they argue will result if the bill is implemented or become an act and implemented, and also the component of the bill, which according to the opponents of the bill, those who are against the bill, that would result in lowering the quality of education and also limiting higher education to only those who can afford to pay for their education. These two criticisms, I am for one and I am not for the other. I'm in agreement with the critics of the bill who claim that this bill results in militarization of education in this country, but with some qualifications. I'm not in total agreement with them, but there is some issues that they are raising I can agree with. But I also must state that militarization is a very complex phenomenon. And I do not wish to go into details because of the time limit I have. I have only 20 minutes, as I mentioned earlier. But the other part of the opposition, the other objection, which is freedom in education, can lead to low. Also, it would lead to shutting out those who cannot pay for education. I don't agree with. Now, having made my stand clear, or rather my position clear, let me proceed with those two areas, the criticism in those two areas. Let me take the militarization of education argument. KNU is a defense university, or it is intended to be a defense university. It started as Kotalawala Defense Academy, and then it was transformed into Kotalawala Defense University, and the present bill wants it to university as Kotalawala National Defense University with a strong civilian component in terms of the student intake as well as program content. Even before this bill, that means even today, Kotalawala Defense University has civilian courses. There's a faculty of medicine offering MBBS degrees to military recruits as well as a small number of civilian students. But what the bill wants to do is to expand the civilian component of the university while retaining the defense. Now, this university becoming a civilian university, or this university starting civilian courses, would this result in militarization of higher education in this country? That is the main issue before us. The university conducting civilian courses, they claim that it will result in militarization of higher education, or that will be it will be the start of a beginning of militarization of higher education. And they point to several provisions in the bill. The governing council, the vice chancellor, and etc., as the military domination of the running of or the management of this university. It's true that the vice chancellor is a military officer that is given in the bill, and also the governing council of the bill, which is the policy-making body of the university, under the direction of the secretary to the Ministry of Defense, and also the president of the country, that is also dominated by military officers. I think 7 out of 9 of its membership come from the defense forces and the Ministry of Defense. Now, this surely is a very high level of defense control of decision making and operations of the university. This could obviously result in some level of military thinking coming into all programs, especially when designing academic programs and implementing them. Now, some people might argue that, so what? This is a defense university. Therefore, it should have its control. The management should be by the defense services. True, but the thing is, this is not only a defense university. It has a strong civilian component, and especially Act says one of the objectives of the university is training public service officers. Now that is one area that I see some dangers, because the public or the state officers getting training in military university, state officers who are holding positions in the nerve centers of the state can be, or rather can lead to military ideologies, military thinking getting into civilian administration of the country. This may be perhaps, some people might think that this is, my views are controversial. It could not happen because these are civilian officers are spending a few years in the university, maybe short-term training, not greatly influence their outlook. So that's something that we have to wait and see. But the thing is, there is that danger. And second criticism about or related to the same administration issue, the second criticism is that this university does not come under the present Universities Act, which was passed by the Parliament in 1978, known as the Universities Act 31 or the 16th of 1978. Because this is not coming, this university is not coming under the Universities Act of 1978, it also means that this university does not come under the supervision of the University Commission. The argument of those who are opposing the bill is that the university not coming under the supervision and regulatory control of the University Grants Commission can have adverse repercussions on the quality of the program, because in this country, UGC is the accreditation agency, or UGC acts also as accreditation agency of academic programs in universities. But what the critics who claim this University Grants Commission not having control over this university can lower the academic standards, forget something that is very important. ANU is not the first university to be set up outside of the control of the University Grants Commission and the Universities Act of 1978.
Dr. Sisira, may I interrupt you? We have 5 minutes more. You have to take it in Sinhala as well.
Okay, I mean, have I spent that much of time? Okay,
yeah,
give me
50,
about give me a little more time because okay, there are 2 other universities set up under the outside of the Universities Grants Commission and the outside of the control of the university. And in addition to the militarization of education, the other criticism that is leveled against this university is that fee-levying model this university is presenting can have adverse repercussions on the students who do not come from well-to-do families getting into higher education. That I don't accept, because this university having fee-levying program does not mean that the government is going to reduce the number of students that are being taken to state universities that do not charge fees. We can discuss this in detail later. In addition to these 2 criticisms, there is also the argument of education. Now, the claim here is that selling education is the objective of this university, and if you sell education, it is like, treating education like a commodity in the market. But the thing is, fee-levying model is very common in other countries, and the has not resulted in commodification of education in those countries. For example, US, they maintain very high standards. There are regulations, or at least the market mechanism controls the level of fees, the rates that the universities charge, and also the students who go to these universities consider them of money. Therefore, they are not willing to pay if what they get is not value for the money that they pay. So in addition to this, there are also some other criticisms, like that this university will result in regimentation of the student behavior, academic freedom, and all that. But suppression of academic freedom under this bill, if you take the Lima Agreement or the Lima Declaration that discusses the academic freedom, I don't have time to go through the Lima Agreement, but it's nothing against nothing that goes against the Lima Agreement, Lima Declaration of Academic Freedom. And also other criticisms like that the minister has excessive, or the Minister of Defense has excessive control over the running of this university. This claim is made by the opponents quoting the part 3, where the minister is of the view that any situation prevailing in the university is likely to endanger national security or is detrimental or prejudicial to national policy or likely to disrupt the smooth functioning of the university. He may direct the Board of Governors to take all steps that are necessary to bring such situation under control. Now, this very same section, except is found in the Universities Act. There are similar other...
Dr. Cicero, 1 minute more.
Yeah, okay, right. Then I'll have to... I don't think I have time to make my presentation in Sinhala. Anyway, what I could... then let me wind this, wind up my... and perhaps we could explain further in the Q&A session. Would that be all right, Professor Abhirat?
We can come back, I think, during the Q&A session.
Yeah, so, that's what I think, yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Cicero, but you can also note there are a couple of comments in the chat box saying that one is actually the composition of the board, and the numbers that you had mentioned is questioned by somebody. So with that comment, militarization, quality of higher education, and limiting higher education to the children of the rich family. So those three issues are very important. Okay. And I hope the others, well, there are a lot of things I think to talk about under these three headings. Actually, you touch upon very correctly these three issues, and I hope the others may also have certain things to say about these three things. And also, I like that the approach that you have taken. This discussion should go beyond the KNDU bill as well, looking at the entire higher education sector. For that, I would like to invite our second speaker, Dr. Sujata Gamage. Dr. Sujata is a senior research fellow attached to the Learn Asia think tank, another think tank. And I know that Dr. Sujata has been actively involved in for long years in the education sector, discussing about educational reforms, school education as well as higher education, university education, and looking at the policies and reforms in the education sector. Dr. Sujata, she is going to speak of the KNDU bill and its implications for the future of higher education sector. So I think she's starting from the point that Dr. Sisira already stopped there, and those key issues will be touched on by Dr. Sujata as well. So, Dr. Sujata, is over to you.
Thank you, Sirmal. Yes, Mama එතරම් පටන් ගන්නම්. සිසිර ඉවර කරපු තැනින් සිසිර ඇත්තටම මම ඇත්තටම කොටස් දෙකකට දකින්නේ මේ පනත ඇත්තටම දකින්නේ අපි එක පැත්තකින් මිලිටරිකරණය අනිත් පැත්තෙන් පෞද්ගලීකරණය කියන දෙකෙන් මිලිටරිකරණය එක මම සිසිර කියපු දේවල් ටිකක් එකතු කරන්න කැමතියි. මම හිතනවා පළවෙනිම මම අහන්න කැමතියි විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයක් අවශ්‍යද? මිලිටරි ඇකඩමි කියන එක පටන් ගත්ත 1981. 1988 මේක යුනිවර්සිටි බවටපත් කරා. ඔන්න ඔතන තමයි ප්‍රශ්නේ තියෙන්නේ. දැන් ලෝකේ මිලිටරි ප්‍රසිද්ධ මිලිටරි පුහුණු ආයතන ගත්තාම හැම එකම මිලිටරි ඇකඩමි. මට හිතෙනවා මිලිටරි යුනිවර්සිටි කියන එක එක විදිහක ඔක්සිමෝරන් මේක ගැලපෙන්නේ නැහැ. මිලිටරි කියන්නේ යම්කිසි දුරාවලියක යම්කිසි දානවට යටත්ව ක්‍රියා කරන ආයතනයක්. විශ්වවිද්‍යාලය කියන්නේ ඊට සම්පූර්ණ වෙනස් ආයතනයක්. ඉතින් මේ දෙක යන්නේ නැහැ. මට හිතෙනවා මිලිටරි යුනිවර්සිටි එක පටන් ගත්ත එක මේක ප්‍රශ්නයක්. මේක කොතලාවල ඩිෆෙන්ස් ඇකඩමි එක වෙන්න ඕන. ඇත්තම ලෝකයේ තියෙන විශිෂ්ටම ඇකඩමියක් වෙන්න පුළුවන් මේකට. මොකද අපිට අපේ ආමිකට අපේ හොමුදාවට හොඳ තියෙනවා මේ හොඳ ප්‍රසිද්ධියක් හොඳ නමක් තියෙනවා. ඉතින් පාකිස්තානයේ චීනයේ වෙස්ට් පොයින්ට් රොයල් ඇකඩමි කියන රොයල් මිලිටරි ඇකඩමි කැනඩා වගේ හැම එකම වගේ අපිටත් හොඳ ඇකඩමියක් වෙන්න තියෙනවා. නමුත් දැන් යුනිවර්සිටි එකක් කරගෙන ඒක මම කියන්නේ ප්‍රශ්නයක්. නමුත් දැන් පහුවෙලේ බෝට්ටුව බස් එක ගිහිල්ලා. ඊළඟට මේකට සිවිලියන්ස් ගන්න ඕනද නැහැ. ඇත්තටම ඒ බස් එකත් ගිහිල්ලා අපි දන්නවා 2019 ඒගොල්ලෝ කිව්වා 1280 දෙනෙක් ග්‍රැජුවේට් කරාය. ප්‍රතිශතය කියලා නෑ කොච්චරද කියලා ස්කෝලර්ස්ලා ඩේ ස්කෝලර්ස් කියලා ඒගොල්ලන්ට කියන්නේ මම ස්පී දිසානක් මහත්මයා මම ඊයේ පෙරද කියන අහංක 40% are day scholars. දැනටම ඒ වැඩෙත් වෙලා. ඉතින් මම මේ පනතේ මම දකින්නේ වෙනස මේක තව දුරටත් ඒක ස්ථාපිත කරන්න උත්සාහයක්. අපි දන්නා 88 academy එකේ කියන්නේ to admit public officers ගැන කිව්වම to follow courses of study related to defense. එහෙම කියලා කියනවා. නමුත් මේක ඊට වඩා නැතුව පුළුල් විදිහට කියනවා කඩෙට් නිලධාරියන්ට සන්නද්ධ හමුදා නිලධාරියන්ට රාජ්‍ය සේවකයන්ට වෙනත් තැනැත්තන්ට උපාධිය ඩිප්ලෝමා මේ කියන්නේ මිලිටරි එකට සම්බන්ධයි කියලා. මම හිතන්නේ මේ ක්ලෝස් එක දෙකයි එක තමයි මම හිතන්නේ දැන් 4යි ආ කියන එක තමයි මම නම් දකින්නේ මේ පනතේ නරකම කොටස. මම හිතන්නේ ඒක අපිට වෙනස් කරගන්න පුළුවන් නම් මේකට අදාළ දේ හරි කලින් මේ 1981 තීච්ච මේකට අදාළ ඩිෆෙන්ස් වලට අදාළ කියලා හරිවත් වෙනස් කරගන්න පුළුවන්කමක් තියෙනවා. හොඳයි. නැත්තම් මෙතන වෙන්නේ අර බූවල්ලා වගේ නැත්තම් අර මේක අපිට වෙන්නේ මේක සම්පූර්ණයෙන් වෙලා ගන්න පුළුවන් උසස් අධ්‍යයන පද්ධතිය විශේෂයෙන් එන්න අපේ රාජ්‍ය විශ්වවිද්‍යාල කඩා වැටෙනකොට තව දුරටත් ළමයි බලනවා දෙමව්පිය බලනවා මෙතනට අරින්න ළමයි වෙලාවට විභාගයක් ඉවර ඩිග්‍රී එක ඉවර කරලා එළියට එන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. ඉතින් මේකෙන් වෙන්නේ තව දුරටත් රාජ්‍ය පද්ධතිය කඩා වැටෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ නිසා මම හිතනවා මේ අරගලයක් තියෙන එළියේ ඒක දිගටම යන්න ඕන. නමුත් මට එක ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා මේ සිසිල කියපු එක ඔක්කම මේ අරගල එකතු වෙලා යන්නේ මේ ප්‍රයිවටයිසේෂන් එකේ මේ පරණ සින්දුවත් එක්කම. ඉතින් ඒක එළියේ අරගලේ ගියාවේ කියලා මම කියනවා. ඒක ඒ විදිහට යන්න මම හිතන්නේ දැන් පහුවෙලා වැඩි. නමුත් මේ වගේ වෙනියුස් වල අපි හොඳයි මේක කතා කරන එක අර සිරිමල් කිව්වාගේ මේකෙන් ඔබට ගිහිල්ලා මේ ප්‍රයිවටයිසේෂන් කියන මේ ජනප්‍රිය ස්ලෝගන් එක මේ සටන් පාටෙන් ඔබට ගිහිල්ලා අපි කතා කරනවා. එතකොට මම අහනවා අපි බලමු සයිටම් කියලා. සයිටම් කියලා අපි ස්ලෝගන් එක පටන් ගන්න මොකද උනේ? සයිටම් එක අන්තිමට KDU එකට දුන්නා. KDU එකට දෙනකොට අපි දන්නවා. KDU එක කියන්නේ මුදල් අය කරන රාජ්‍ය ආයතනයක්. KDU කියන්නේ UGC එකේ C-score එකෙන් බාහිර වැඩ කරනවා. මේක දැන මේ ක්‍රියාදරයෝ නිහඬයි. හරි. ඒ දෙක ඒ වෙලාවේ පිළිගත්තා. ඒ බස් එකක් දැන් ගිහිල්ලා. ඒ කියන්නේ රාජ්‍ය ආයතන වලට මුදල් අය කරනවා කියන එකත් ඊළඟට රාජ්‍ය ආයතන වලට රාජ්‍ය උපාධි ආයතන වලට රාජ්‍ය අධ්‍යාපන ආයතන වලට මේ UGC C-score system එකෙන් පිට බඳවා ගන්න පුළුවන් කියන දෙකත් ඒ බස් එකක් ගිහිල්ලා. මම පුද්ගලිකව කියනවා ඒක ඇත්තටම ඒ choice එක ලැබෙන්නේ හොඳයි. නමුත් ඒක වෙනම කතාවක්. එතකොට ඇත්තටම අපි ඇත්තටම වෙන්නේ මේක මට තියෙන මට තියෙන ලොකුම ප්‍රශ්නේ මෙතන අපි මේ privatization කියන කොටස militarization හරි මම පිළිගන්නවා අපි ඒකට සටන් කරනවා මේ privatization කියන ස්ලෝගන් එක අපෙලා තියෙන්නේ අපි මේ ඇත්තටම මේ නිදහස් අධ්‍යාපන කඩතුරාවෙන් අපේ ඇස් වහගෙන අපි ඇත්ත රටේ අවශ්‍ය අධ්‍යාපන ප්‍රතිසංස්කරණ අර අපි පටන් ගන්නකොට කිව්වා වගේ කෙරෙන්නේ නැහැ. එතකොට බලන්නේ පාසල් අධ්‍යාපනය අපි කියනවා නොමිලේ කියලා. හැබැයි HIS 2016 කුටුම්බවල ආදායම් සහ වියදම් පිළිබඳ සමීක්ෂණේ කිව්වා සාමාන්‍ය පවුලක් රුපියල් 2016ක් වියදම් කරනවා කියලා ටියුෂන් වලට අමතර වියදමක්. ඇත්තටම ඒ ගාන ඇත්තටම ඊට වඩා වැඩි වෙන්න පුළුවන්. අපි දන්නවා ඇත්තට මේ කතාව කියන්න ඇත්තට මෙතන වෙලාවක් නැහැ. නමුත් අපි රටේ ඇත්තටම අපි දන්නවා සියනේ පාසල් තියෙනවා යම් ඒගොල්ලන්ගෙන් ක්‍රියාවලියක් වෙනවා පාසල් වල ළමයින්ට සමාජකරණය වෙනවා ළමයින්ට ගුරුවරුන්ගේ යම්කිසි හවුහරණයක් ලැබෙනවා. නමුත් ඇත්තටම වෙන්නේ අධ්‍යාපනයේ සම්පූර්ණ රඳාපවතින විභාග තුනක් තියෙනවා. ඔය තුනට සම්පූර්ණයෙන් ටියුෂන් හරහා ඒ විභාග තුන දුවනවා ඉස්කෝලේ නිකන් නාමිකව අපි තියාගෙන ඉන්නවා. ඉතින් මේකේ ඉස්කෝලවල අපිට නිදහස් අධ්‍යාපන දෙන්න හැම කෙනෙක්ටම අධ්‍යාපන ගන්න තැනක් තියෙනවා. නමුත් ඇත්තටම සැබවින්ම මේ අධ්‍යාපන නිදහස් නෑ. ඇත්තටම මුදල් තියෙන අයට තමයි මුදලක් ගෙවා තමයි මේ විභාග පාස් වෙන්න ඕනේ. එහෙම නැතුව පාස් වෙන්න බෑ. ඉතින් අපි මේක මතක තියාගන්න ඕන. ඇත්තටම පාසල් අධ්‍යාපනය උනත් ඇත්තටම නිදහස් නෑ කියලා. ඊළඟ උසස් අධ්‍යාපනය ගත්තාම අපි කැමති හිතන්න අපිට නිදහස් අධ්‍යාපනයක් තියෙනවා කියලා. නමුත් ඇත්තට හිතලා බලන්න අපි ළමයි 3,30,000ක් අවුරුදු 8 සම්පූර්ණ කරනවා. මේ අයට අවස්ථාව ලැබිලා තියෙනවා පූර්ණ අධ්‍යාපනයක් 1:13 ලක්ව ලබන්න. ඒක ගත්තත් නැතත් ඒ අවස්ථාව තියෙනවා කියම සමහර විෂමතා තියෙනවා. නමුත් මෙතනටම අපි කියනවා 8ක් තෝරලා අපි පොඩි කඩේමක් දාලා ඒ බායක අපි එන්නේ හැමදාම උස්සන මෙච්චරයි ඉඩ තියෙන්නේ ඒ ඉඩේ හැටියට අපි බාරක උස්සලා 100 ගිය අවුරුදු 2019 7.8යි මේකට අපි තෝරලා පූර්ණ නොමිලේ අධ්‍යාපනයක් දෙන ඉතුරු 192 ගැන කවුරුත් කතා කරන්නේ. අපි කියනවා මේක නිදහස් අධ්‍යාපනය කියලා. ඉතින් මෙන්න මේකයි. අපි ඒ නිසා මං කියන්නේ මේ අවස්ථාව පාවිච්චි ගන්න මේ පරණ ස්ලෝගන් එකකින් නැතුව කල්පනා කරලා බලන්න අපි අවංකව කල්පනා කරලා බලන්න මොකද්ද අපි මේ උසස් නිදහස් අධ්‍යාපනය කියලා කියන්නේ කියලා. ඒක නිසා අපි අවංකව කල්පනා කරලා අපි පළවෙනි එකක් මේ කඩතුරාව අයින් කරමු. අපි කියනවා ආණ්ඩුවෙන් දැන් කියනවා හැම දිස්ත්‍රික් එකකම සිටි යුනිවර්සිටි එකක් දානවා කියලා. එතකොට මේ සිටි යුනිවර්සිටි එකක් දාන්න මේ ඇත්තටම කොහෙන්ද මේ සල්ලි යන්නේ? එන්න බජට් එකෙන් අඩු කරන මුදල 2021 මුදල 2020ට වඩා අඩු වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් මේ තත්ත්වයන් යටතේ කාවද මේ අපි රවට්ටන්නේ? අධ්‍යාපනය ඉන්න බාල කරනවා සිටි යුනිවර්සිටි යනවා අපි කතා කරලා බලන අපිට මොනවද අවශ්‍ය? අපිට ඇත්තට මොනවද අවශ්‍ය කියලා. දෙවෙනි එක අපි කියන්න ඕන අනිත් එක අපි කියන්න ඕන දෙවෙනි එක මේ බයිපාස් ක්‍රම. මේ බයිපාස් ක්‍රම අපි දැක්ක නොදැක්ක වගේ ඉන්නවා. පළවෙනි එක ජාතික අපි දන්නවා හැබැයි මේ බයිපාස් ක්‍රම ඇත්තට හොඳ ප්‍රතිඵල ඇහිලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් අපි සද්ද නැතුව ඉන්නවා. නමුත් මේ බයිපාස් ක්‍රම වලින් සහ මේ කඩතුරා නිදහස් අධ්‍යාපනය තියෙනවා කියලා අපි කඩතුරාව දාගෙන බයිපාස් ක්‍රම වලට යන්න දෙනවා. ඇත්තටම වෙලා තියෙන අපට අවශ්‍ය මේ දෙකම නෙවෙයි අපට අවශ්‍යයි නියම අධ්‍යාපන ප්‍රතිපත්තියක් අවංක අධ්‍යාපන ප්‍රතිපත්තියක්. ඉතින් එතන අපි කියන්නේ බලන්න බයිපාස් මෙතඩ් මේක පළවෙනි එක නෙවෙයි. KDU එක බයිපාස් ක්‍රමයක් මේ UGC ක්‍රමය මේ කිසිම සත්‍යයක්වත් අය නොකරන් යුතුයි කියන මේ මිත්‍යාව මේක ලෝකෙ කොහොමවත් නැහැ. කැනඩාවේ සියලු විශ්වවිද්‍යාල රාජ්‍ය විශ්වවිද්‍යාල ඒ රටේ ඉඩ දෙන්නේ නැහැ පුද්ගලික විශ්වවිද්‍යාල දාන්න. නමුත් හැම කෙනෙක්ම සාමාන්‍ය මම මේ විශ්වවිද්‍යාල වැඩ කරලා තියෙනවා ඇඩ්මිනිස්ට්‍රේටර් කෙනෙක් හැටියට එක්සත් ජනපදයේ සාමාන්‍ය 3න් 1ක් පමණ ආදායම ලබා ගන්න ශිෂ්‍යයන්ගේ මුදල් වලින්. ඉතින් අපි ඒක ගැන කතා කරන්න ඕන. මොකද සල්ලි දාන්න ඕන කොහෙද කියලා කල්පනා කරනවා. අධ්‍යාපනයකම පාසල් අධ්‍යාපනය තියෙනවා. අපි පාසල් අධ්‍යාපනය ගරා වැටෙන දීලා අපි අර සද්දේ වැඩි සද්ද කරන තැන තමයි තෘතීය අධ්‍යාපනය විශ්වවිද්‍යාල අධ්‍යාපනය අධ්‍යයන සල්ලි දානවා. ඇත්තටම ලෝක බැංකුවෙන් කරපු අධ්‍යයනයක් තියෙනවා Treasures of the Education System මම හිතන්නේ ඒක අධ්‍යයනයේ 2004ද කොහෙද? ඒකේ පෙන්නුවා අපි ලංකාවේ අපි උසස් අධ්‍යාපනයට අපි ඇත්තටම පාස වෙන රටවලට වඩා ප්‍රතිශතයකට වැඩි වේදම් කරනවා. එන්නේ මේ ප්‍රතිශතය. හරි. ඉතින් ඒක නිසා මම කියන්නේ අපි පළවෙනි එක මම විනාඩි 5ක් 10ක් වෙනවා. හරි. මම මේ ඊටු ටික මම මගේ conclusion එක මම ඉංග්‍රීසියෙන් කියන්නේ. What I would like to say is, we have two issues: militarization, privatizations. Take militarization. I think the military and university are oxymorons. So military university, that nomenclature itself is a problem. We should have opposed this in 1988, but 1980 was a different time. So I think we should have stayed the military academy, but that bus is gone. We have a military university. I think as a military university, I don't think there's a problem with this act. The problem is with the clause that says it is for government servants. It's for the military cadets, military officers, government servants, government officers, and any other personnel. There's no limit. In the academy bill, they had a limit. They said for military and other purposes. I think if we can at least get that clause in there, I think it'll be an achievement. I think this bill as a whole, I studied it a little bit in depth. I think as a military university, military academy, I think it's fine. You can have military people in the council, and the minister can actually order the council. So we have a civilian person actually ordering this council. So I think there's civilian control over this military university. They think Mr. Kotalawala is going to be president forever. No, so it could be different. And there is going to be civilian control. So in that sense, it's not a totally controlled by the military. I think as a military university, academy, it's fine. I think the problem is in the clause where they just give unlimited, this undefined objective for this institution. It has to be removed. You cannot let military and university don't go together. And the second one is privatization. I think let's get out of this privatization bandwagon. I mean, we've gone through CITEM. CITEM is gone, but we're still there. UGC is I think it's a bunch of clerks. All they do is, just add up marks, issue circulars, and they deal with only 7.8% of our youth population. I mean, we need an institution that deals with the whole youth cohort and look after their interests and see, make sure that they give the information, give the regulations to make opportunities available for these groups. So I think not just go through the same route and end up in square one, UGC, CSCO, and the same old story. So I think let's have an honest conversation. What are our priorities? School education, I would say, should be our priority. The priority of the government should be to make sure that every child, when they turn 18, they are prepared to face the world. Right now, 50% of our children are left out. Sorry, I did not say that in English, but let's go with it. 50% of our children are left out. How do we know that? We didn't know that earlier. When they were going to school, going to the classroom and come back out, it seems everything is fine. With Corona, we found out 50% are left out. That's because the children, the teachers are going with who can join the, online education or whatever. That's the same thing that happens in regular school too. Teachers are just just dragging along the children, those who can, and the rest are left out, and 50% is left out. So our priority should be, I think, education, school education, school education, school education. I would repeat. And then next is, I think, should be second priority. Once if we get our children, 18-year-olds, ready to first face the world with the critical thinking skills, the English, IT, and the confidence, I mean, they look after themselves. You don't have to be mollycoddling. Right now, we just give a bad education in school, and then we're mollycoddling our youth for the rest of the time. So I think let's look at the education funding formula. I think what the World Bank found in 2004, I'm sure it's worsened. Let's reallocate. Let the university, the funding for universities, let's not talk about solutions, but what I would say, let us have a conversation. The conversation is about providing truly free school education system. Right now, school education is not free. It is for those who can afford good tuition. So I think first priority is truly free school education for every child until they turn 18. And then second priority, take away the need for bypass systems. Me boru karane pa, me boru kattakang nigang kole wahala karna wada karane pa. Hari adhyapana pratipattiyak hadagam. Take away the need for this bypass system. Bypass system, NIBM, National Institute of Business Management, එක degree කරන්න ඕන නා. මේක ආණ්ඩුවේ සංස්ථාපිත ආයතනයක්. මොකද ඒගොල්ලෝ කරේ ඒගොල්ලෝ පුද්ගලික ආයතනයක් හැදුවා NSMBM කියලා. ඒකට guarantee එකක් දුන්නා finance ministry එකෙන් Bank of Ceylon එකේ guarantee එකක් දුන්නා loan guarantee එකක් දුන්නා. Kotalawala defense එකකට එකයි Bank of Ceylon loan guarantee කරනවා finance ministry එක. මේවා bypass system. හරි පුද්ගලික ළමින්ගේ fees අය කරනවා නම් කතා කරමු. තෘතීය අධ්‍යාපන සඳහා fees අය කරනවා නම් විවෘතව කතා කරමු. මේ හැංගි හොරා වැඩ කරන්නේ නැතුව මං කියන්නේ අපි මේ හැංගි හොරා bypass system නැතුව තෘතීය අධ්‍යාපනය කොහොමද කරන්නේ? පාසල් අධ්‍යාපනයේ ප්‍රමුඛතාවය දීලා දෙවනුව ඊළඟට අපි සෑම කෙනෙක්ට හැකි පමණින් අවස්ථා දෙන්නේ කොහොමද? ඒක සමසාධාරණව how to give that equitably කියන එක සාකච්ඡා කරමු. නේද? මම හිතන්නේ මගේ කාලිකව ගියත් නැතත් මගේ කියන්න තියෙන දේ වෙන අවසానයි බොහොම ස්තුතියි.
Thank you, Dr. Sujata. You actually saved
Sirmal?
Yeah. Minutes.
Yeah, I'll take it later.
Well, anyway, you talk about militarization, but we will also come back to that in our discussions later. But you touched the heart of the education problem in this country, not only confining your points to the higher education, but also touching the problem of the school education as well. And if you are looking at actual education, better education system, we should not look at only the higher education sector. We should start with school education, without which actually some of the problems we have seen, some of the problems of the school education system in this country, they are transferred to the higher education sector also, so that the higher education sector also suffer from those weaknesses. Thank you, Dr. Sujata. And our next invitation is to Dr. Anil Jayantha Fernando. Dr. Anil is a senior lecturer of accounting from the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura. And he is going to talk about, well, this wonderfully, all these speeches are lined up in one connect to the other connect to the other, and so on. And he is going to talk about commoditization of education and looking beyond that, with reference to the KNDU bill as well. Dr. Anil, over to you, and you got 20 minutes. You can manage your language as whether you want to speak English, Sinhala, or both lingual.
Sure. Thank you so much, Professor Sirimal. Quickly, I hope my screen is seen. I'm just using.
We can see that. You can also go to the presentation mode. Yes.
Yes. So I would like to talk, like, before coming to the KDU bill, I would like to provide the premise on which that could be analyzed, then referring to few thoughts of purpose of education, how and why education is seen in market society, and then the implication of KDU. When it comes to the education, it links to the philosophy, of course. Philosophers also have expressed different views, just to know, like Plato, Aristotle. So how they have referred to education. Of course, Plato says that is just to, it's a means of achieving justice, not only the individual and social justice as well. And Aristotle viewed education as purely a public good. So, and it should be the same, I mean, the similarly available for everyone. Just thoughts only. Now I look at an economist, where we live, like we live in a market economy. Rather, now my argument is that market economy is sliding towards a market society. That is the problem. But the Adam Smith, the economist who thought of this very best foundation of market economy, also stressed and highlighted the importance of education. He never said that it should be commodified or traded in the market. It is the responsibility of the government to provide the public education for everyone. So whereas the competition, the so-called the baker, farmer, butcher should produce goods and services at the maximum efficiency at the lowest cost, then automatically in the process of maximizing your own utility would serve the maximizing or catering the public interest as well. So that is another approach. Then there are different arguments about education. So approaches can be again divided into two. One is the egalitarian approach. The other one is the utilitarian approach. Egalitarian approach is to provide equal opportunities for education, irrespective of social background, financial background, or any other things. So all humans should be provided equal opportunities to have adequate, decent education. So whereas against this egalitarian approach, the utilitarian approach is a little bit different. It should be just making people who fit into the society at an elite level. So, and where the education should contribute to manufacture or just produce productive citizen. It does not talk about all. Then the purposes based on all these philosophical ideas, approaches, all those things, two purposes can be identified, especially as of now. Number one is the enlightenment purpose. The other one is indoctrination purpose. So enlightenment purpose argues and says, we need to have education for what? To achieve the highest goal in the life, to inquire the world, question the world, think of alternatives, don't believe in things, whereby enable people to learn and challenge the doctrine and the authority. Don't follow, just question and come out with always just go for the falsification, search for alternatives. So that is the argument of enlightenment. The other argument now, especially this indoctrination, was very popular, even now popular. Even I regard this KNDU, that this particular bill is a kind of apparatus to support this indoctrination. Indoctrination, which was popular especially in 1960s, to be obedient, be conformist, and follow orders, but not to challenge the system. To introduce more control, especially so because of this 1960s, so people started just rioting and demonstration, mainly because of as a consequence of neoliberal ideas and agendas. So whereby to provide, so indoctrination used to provide a justification from economic terms, whereby people have to be obedient and conformist. Then this is one quotation from Yuval Noah Harari, the greatest historian. He says, education does not belong to individual, it belongs to society. He explains, in certain cases, even to develop a small tool for the human to conquer the world, it took 100 years or maybe sometime 1,000. So education is being transferred. It is imparted from one to the other. So we are compared to other animals. So therefore, it doesn't belong to individual. It is a societal. And so one of the good example how and why education should be publicly taken care of. And it is not free. It is a wrong idea if someone says it's free. So nothing is free. There is a cost. Resources are there. But the education is wrongly interpreted that it is free. It is not free. It is collectively. The expenses are borne by collectively. So that is the idea. Even if you take all those development, big breakthroughs in the society are publicly funded. So Wi-Fi, where we use now Zoom technology, which was also funded by the public agency in Australia, CSIRO. So this is one example. Likewise, if you just look at many things, so the things have been funded collectively, not individually. Then the KDU bill, lots of things are there. At the outset, the purpose of the KDU bill impart higher education at national level with the military flavor. Really questions all of the speakers also just talk about this thing. One of the biggest area is this purpose. the intention of the Kotalawala was to provide adequate like this knowledge or whatever to armed forces. That is all right. Now they are trying to cross the borders and like encroach in other territory. Section 2 says like not standing in the existing university bill, they can do whatever they want. And don't forget the fact that KNDU would be, after this particular act, would be a body corporate. It has a going concern forever, and it would be like officials would be taking responsibility from then and there. If something goes wrong, so what would be the consequences? Because so those things should be discussed in future. Anyhow, UGC as of now in the present education system, that is the apex body, but here this KNDU bill, this particular university would be governed by the Board of Governance. Objective, the problematic area is just crossing the border to other persons, just catering not only to public servants and the armed forces and other persons. And this one, another objective, establishes campuses, colleges, for any institutions, any apparatus as they wish. For Sri Lanka, even you can go for collaborations and always. So within this military supervision for sure. Then the responsibilities and the powers. Of course, we can say that the minister is a civilian, but of course that goes to the Ministry of Defense. Then the Board of Governance will comply with all the directions issued by the ministry. So this, like, you will not have any freedom to take your own decision. Of course, just be obedient and conformist for sure. And again, this is just because of the ministers feel. If the ministers is of the view that if situation is a threat to the national security, all those things are interpretative and vague, you take control or actions to control it. It would be really like this kind of control purposes are pretty much included there. Officers are quickly move on to the Board of Governance. So here it is 9, of course, there are. At the end, if you look at even the secretary, additional secretary, even vice chancellor should be a senior officer. At the end, the apex body who take all those decisions are really military, of course. So they have nothing to do with education, other education, general education. Of course, military education, I agree. They can do so many things. They can take experience from the war and whatever the local tacit knowledge, can even invite foreign people to come and study in terms of military and not the general education. And the powers, I'm not going to go through all those things. And disciplinary action, when it comes to disciplinary, it is very clearly mentioned in accordance with the Army Act, Navy Act, Air Force Act. So it's not, I don't know. So this is just for us to debate. And at the end of the day, all right, even if we bring some justification, all right, we would do this thing just to improve the existing system, to promote the education and so many stories. But I mean, whereby the general public can't spend, so then the private or any other funds. But actually, this institution would be run by the the public money. So parliament approval, like parliamentary appropriation, and it very clearly says that any kind of supplementary estimates can be provided. So especially when it comes to within the Ministry of Defense, there are certain sections, so you may not be able to question for what purposes and all those things. So I have a very big doubt that this institution would be turned out to be a specific purpose enterprise, in addition to destroying the education system in Sri Lanka, but also to provide a very good passage for top military brass and elite class, or maybe the few to have extravagant lives for sure. And that part is not discussed, not debated, because the money is taken from the general public. You might take donations, student fees, and so it would not be that much easy for this particular university to charge high prices and run its own. Of course, general public will have to bear it. That is what our public education system. And I just skip these things, 64 and all those things. And abruptly, now government came out another solution saying that because of some criticism, now it is going to be brought under the Universities Act. No, it is not in the University Act. It says universities, UGC can now establish universities for specific purposes. It does not specifically say that it is going to govern this KDU. Even specific purpose university, how does it include general education? It should be specific. So then big puzzles that I have is whether the government is purposely taking actions to destabilize the education system, that is the public education system, of course, which has lots of problems. It's deviating from the alignment and the egalitarian aspects. So instead of fixing all those things, so moving towards somewhere else, that is a market society. Market society is a place where everything is being sold or everything is up for sale. So that is a big issue as of now, even in the Western countries. They have also done these things, moving towards where education, health, environment, society, public, civic rights, everything can be sold. So I do not know, I have a little bit gut feeling that they are doing. So the conclusion, I would like to say that within this situation, it's all right. We better take a decision democratically, knowingly, thinking. So what is going to happen is just take the major areas. So what is our existing education system? Of course, it has problem. Do we need a very, very good public education system to enlighten people, or have to just create a kind of human who cares about others? Or to think of such an indoctrination society where people should be controlled and made to be obedient and conformist. So knowing this thing, if people say, yes, we want such a society, that would be all right. And so my argument is that within this structure and the other features seen in the act and what the governments and other people, even the lobbying, this is not only in individual act, same time, lots of pressure. Pressure is coming against those who talk about public education. Pressure is there for other guys to support. So my argument is, interpretation is this KDU bill is certainly in line with the indoctrination and destruction of the public education. Thank you so much. I will talk a little bit in Sinhala. So මම ඇත්තට මේ පැහැදිලි කරපු කාරණා ටික මෙන්න මේ වගේ දෙයක් අපි මේ KDU මම හිතන්නේ මට තව විනාඩි 7-8ක් ඇති.
විනාඩි 5-6ක් විතර දෙන්න පුළුවන් ડોක්ටර් ආනන්ද.
Thank you. මම හිතනවා මැනේජ් කරගන්න පුළුවන් වෙයි කියලා මට. මෙන්න මේ KDU ඇක්ට් එක ගැන කතා කරන්න කලින් අපිට අවබෝධයක් තිබුණොත් හොඳයි මේ අධ්‍යාපනය කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියන එක. ඒක තමයි දාර්ශනික වශයෙන් විශේෂ විවිධාය අධ්‍යාපනය ගැන කතා කරලා තියෙනවා. මම මේ උපුටා දැක්වේ මේ ප්ලේටෝ ඇරිස්ටෝටල් වගේ අය පවා මේකේ තියෙන මේ සමාජමය වැදගත්කම මේක පොදු බව රැකෙන්නට ඕනේ කියන එක පිළිබඳ අදහස් දක්වලා තියෙනවා. අපි මේ ජීවත් වෙන මාකට් ඉකොනොමි එක මේ වෙළඳපොළ අර්ථ ක්‍රමේ නිර්මාතෘවරයා වෙච්ච ඇඩම් ස්මිත් පවා මේ පබ්ලික් එඩියුකේෂන් එකේ වැදගත්කම සාකච්ඡා කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒක ලබා දෙන්න ඕනේ ආණ්ඩුව. ඒ රාජ්‍ය විසින්. එහෙම නැත්නම් ඒක වෙළඳපොළ තුල ඉන්විසිබල් හෑන්ඩ් එකට අර අපිට නොපෙනෙන හස්තයට තීරණය කරන්න ඇරියොත් ලොකු විනාශයකට යන්න ඉඩකඩ තියෙනවා කියන එක ඒ කාලේ පවා දැක්කා. හැබැයි අවසනාවකට අද ඇඩම් ස්මිත් කතා කරපු මාකට් ඉකොනොමි එකක් නෙමෙයි තියෙන්නේ. වෙන ඉකොනොමි එකක් තියෙන්නේ. ඒක තමයි මම දකින මෙන්න මේ මාකට් සොසයිටි එකට හිමින් තල්ලු වේගෙන යනවා. ඒකේ හැමදේම විකුණන්න පෙළඹෙනවා. ඒ නිසා විකුණිය නොයුතු දේවල් මෙන්න මේ කොමෝඩිෆයි වෙන්න ඕනේ නැති අධ්‍යාපනය වගේ දෙයක් දැන් කොමෝඩිෆයි වෙනවා ලාභ ලැබීමේ අරමුණෙන් සමග. නිසා මෙන්න මේ අධ්‍යාපනයේ පිළිබඳ දකින්න දැක්මවල approaches ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන් මේ කාණ්ඩ දෙකට ගන්නේ අනුවයි egalitarian සහ utilitarian කියලා. ඒතකොට egalitarian approach එකේදී අපි හැමතිස්සෙම බලන්නේ අපි මේ අධ්‍යාපනය අර පොදු වෙදෙන්නට ඕන මේක පොදු භාණ්ඩයක් සුබ සාධනය කියන්නේ හැම කෙනෙකුටම free the free කියන වචනේ වැරදියට ගන්න නරකයි. මේ freely කියලා කියන්නේ මුදල් වැය වෙන්නේ නැහැ කියන එක නෙමෙයි. මේ freely access කරන්න පුළුවන් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. එන්නේ ඒක හැම කෙනෙකුටම ඒ අයිතිවාසිකම ලැබෙන පොදු බව රැකගෙන සමාජගත වෙන්න ඕනේ කියන අදහස තමයි egalitarian එකේ තියෙන්නේ. utilitarian එකේ කියන්නේ එහෙම නෙමෙයි. අර භාණ්ඩ නිෂ්පාදනය කරන්න ඒ elite class එකකට අවශ්‍ය කරන කාණ්ඩයකට අවශ්‍ය වෙනමම කණ්ඩායමක් විතරක් හදාගත්තාම ඇති. මොකද මේ තියෙන දැන් තාක්ෂණයේ දියුණුවත් එක්ක හිටන්නේ ඔකට බලන්න පුළුවන් මුළු ලෝකෙම දැන් කන්ට්‍රෝල් කරන්නේ කම්පැනි 4-5ක්. ඒ තත්ත්වයේ යටතේ මහා ගොඩක් මිනිස්සු ලෝකෙට ඕන වෙන්නේ නැහැ බිලියන ගාණාවක්. එතකොට මේ වැඩක් නැති මිනිස්සු මෙන්න මේ utilitarian approach එකට ගියාම ලක්ෂ දසලක්ෂ මිලියන බිලියන ගණන් සෙනඟ ගොඩකට කියන්න පුළුවන් උඹලා එච්චර අධ්‍යාපනයක් ලබන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. උඹලාට සල්ලි කෙනෙක් විදිහට ලබා ගන්න ඉන්න පැත්තකට ලා ඉඳපල්ලා කියන ඕඩර් එක විතරක් පිළිපැදපල්ලා ඕන ප්‍රමාණය විතරක් අපි ගන්නම් කියන පැත්තකට යාම ඉඩකඩක් තියෙන එක තමයි මේ utilitarian approach එක කියලා කියන්නේ. ඔය approaches දෙකෙන් ආවට පස්සේ education එකේ purpose එක කාර්යභාරයත් අපි කොටස් දෙකකට වෙන් කර ගන්නවා. ඇයි අපිට education එකක් අධ්‍යාපනය education නැතුව ජීවත් වෙන්න බැරිද? ඕනනම් පුළුවන්. කාලා බිල සතෙක් වගේත් ඉන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් education කියලා කියන්නේ අපේ මේ ජීවිතය අත්විඳින්න, දකින්න, එන්ලයිටන් කරන්න තමයි এডুকেෂන් එක ඕනයි කියන ආගියුමන්ට් එකක් එක පැත්තකින් එනවා. එහෙම දැක්කොත් අපිට ලෝකේ ප්‍රශ්න කරන්න පුළුවන්. ලෝකේ ප්‍රශ්න කරපු මිනිස්සු තමයි වෙනස් කළේ. එහෙම තමයි මේක වෙනස් වෙමින් එන්නේ. එහෙම වුණොත් විතරක් අන්න අලුත් දේවල් විකල්ප දේවල් අපිට හොයන්න පුළුවන්. එහෙම නැතුව අපි මේ ඉන්ඩොක්ට්‍රිනේෂන් කියන අප්‍රෝච් එකට ගියොත් වෙන මොකුත් ඕනේ නැහැ. කියන දේ අහපන්, නිශ්ශබ්දවයන් කීකරුවයන් ෆලෝ කරපන් එච්චරයි. ඉතින් මේක විශේෂයෙන්ම 1970 80 වෙනකොට සමාජයට ආවා. අපි ඔය කවුරුත් දේශපාලනයේදී කතා කරන නියෝලිබරල් පොලිසි එක කියලා. මොකද අර ධනේශ්වර ක්‍රමයට තව දුරටත් අර වෙළඳපොළ තුලින් ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ ලාභ උපරිම කරගෙන යන්න බැරි වුණා බඩු භාණ්ඩ විතරක් නිෂ්පාදනය කරලා. ඒක හිර වුණා. ඒ හිර වෙච්ච තැන තමයි ඒගොල්ලෝ පටන් ගන්න ගත්තා බඩු භාණ්ඩ නොවන වෙනත් දේවලුත් කොමෝඩිෆයි කරන්න. අධ්‍යාපනය, සෞඛ්‍ය, පරිසරය, සමාජයේ නීති ආචාර ඊවන් ශරීරයේ පවා. අපි දැන් ගණිකා වෘත්ති වගේ දෙයක් ගත්තත් අපි ඕන තැනකට කාටද තර්ක කරන්න පුළුවන් මේක ජීවත් වෙන්න තමයි කරන්න කියන එක. මෙන්න මේ සෝෂල් වැලියුස් කඩලා මිනිස්සු කරන්න ගත්තා. ඒවත් එක්කම මිනිස්සු උද්ඝෝෂණය කරන්න ගත්තා. එතකොට ඒගොල්ලන්ට තර්ජනයක් වෙන නිසා තමයි මෙන්න මේ අප්‍රෝච් එක ඉන්ඩොක්ට්‍රිනේෂන් කියන අප්‍රෝච් එකට එන්නේ. ඒ අනුව මේ এডুকেෂන් එක කාටද කියන කාරණේ මම පැහැදිලි කරා. ඒකේ දල අදහස තමයි අත්‍තරම තියෙන්නට ඕනේ. මගේ ආගියුමන්ට් එක තනි තනි පුද්ගලයාට නෙමෙයි. ඒක සමාජයට. ඒ නිසා තමයි මිනිහා අද අනිත් සත්තු අභිබවලා කොංක වෙලා මේ ලෝකේ උඩින්ම ඉන්නේ. හෝමෝ සේපියන්ස් ලගෙන් පැවතගෙන යන අපි. ඒතර මෙන්න මේ පනතේ තියෙන ප්‍රධාන ගැටලු ටික අපි ගත්තාම ඒ පනත පටන් ගන්න පර්පස් එකම තමයි higher education එකට අත තියන්න මිලිටරි එකට ඉඩ දෙනවා. යුනිවර්සිටි ලෙවල් එකේ. ඒකල මිලිටරි එඩියුකේෂන් එක දුන්නාට අපිට ප්‍රශ්නයක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. එහෙනම් පොදු එඩියුකේෂන් එකට අත තියනවා. එතකොට ඒක සර් ජෝන් කොතලාවලගේ අරමුණටත් පිටින් යාමක්. එතකොට මේකේ සෙක්ෂන් දෙකේ පැහැදිලිව කියනවා මේ view එක අන්තර්ගතය මේක බොඩි කෝපරේට්. එතකොට නීති අනුකූල නෛතික භාවයක් තියෙනවා ආකඩම පවතගෙන යන්න. හැබැයි මේ බොඩි කෝපරේට් එකත් අතරම බුදු පුද්ගලික හෝ වෙනත් ආයතනයක් නෙමෙයි මහ ජනතාවගේ මුදලින් නඩත්තු වෙන්නේ. එහෙමනම් ඒ මුදල් එයි අපිට නඩත්තු කරන්න බැලි මේ පවතින පබ්ලික් එඩියුකේෂන් සිස්ටම් එක තවදුරටත් ඒකේ තියෙන අඩුපාඩු ගෙනියන්න. ඇත්තටම මම පිළිගන්නවා පබ්ලික් එඩියුකේෂන් සිස්ටම් එකේ විශාල අඩුපාඩු ගණනාවක් තියෙනවා. ඒකට කිසිම විදිහකට ඉඩක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ විකල්ප දෙයක් ගෙනෙන්න. අපේ උගන්වන පාඨමාලාවකට අලුතින් දෙයක් එකතු කරන්නක්වත් ඇත්තටම ඉඩ කඩ නැහැ. ලෝකේ ගොඩාක් ඕල්ටර්නේටිව් මෙතඩ්ස් තියෙනවා. ඒවා සාකච්ඡා කරන්න බෑ. මොකද අපි ඍජුව හෝ වක්‍රව ගෙනල්ලා හිර කරනවා ඉන්ඩොක්ට්‍රිනේෂන් එක ඇතුලේ විකල්ප කතා කරන්න එපයි කියන එකට. එතකොට ওই තියෙන අරමුණු ටික ඒ වගේම මේ විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයට පුළුවන් මම එකින් එක මේ කාරණා අපේ වල පැටලෙන්න ඉච්චර උත්සාහ කරන්නේ මම පෙන්නන්නේ මේකේ අවසාන විග්‍රහය තමයි අන්න අර ඉන්ඩොක්ට්‍රිනේෂන් පැත්තට යන එකට උදව් කරන්න තමයි මේ සියලුම උපාංග මේක ඇතුලේ ඇතුළත් කරලා තියෙන්නේ ඕන ආයතන හදන්න පුළුවන් මේ හැදුවයි කියලා මේකෙන් මහා ලොකු ඩිග්‍රී දීලා සල්ලි අපිට දෙලා
ડોක්ටර් අනිත් තව විනාඩියක්
හරි බොහොම ස්තුතියි මට පුළුවන් එතකොට මේ විදියට ගියාට පස්සේ මේ national security එක සම්බන්ධයෙන් පවා හිතුමා කැමති විදියට හැසිරෙන්නට පුළුවන් ඔෆිසර්ස්ලා පත් කරන එක මේ board of governors ලා ගත්තාම මේක තනිකරම military view එකක් අවසානයේදී තියෙන්නේ UGC එකේ නියෝජිතයටවත් treasury එකේ නියෝජිතයටවත් මහා ලොකු දෙයක් කරන්න වෙන්නේ නැහැ අපි දන්නවා මේ discipline එකක් ඇතුලේ මහා ලොකු දෙයක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ ඒ නිසා මෙන්න මේ කාරණා සැලකලට ගත්තාම අවසාන විග්‍රහයේදී මම කියන්න කැමතියි මේ පාලනය වෙන්නේ නඩත් වෙන්නේ අවසානයේදී මහ ජනතාවගේ මුදලින්. ඔය කියන এডুকেෂන් එකේ කිසි විප්ලවයක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. තව ඩිස්ට්‍රැක්ෂන් එකකට තමයි යන්නේ. හැබැයි ඒ ආයතනය නඩත්තු කරනවා මහ ජන මුදලින්. මොකද මේක දැන් රාජ්‍ය ආරක්ෂක අමාත්‍යාංශය යටතේ එනකොට ඕන තරම් සල්ලි ගන්න පුළුවන්, එස්ටිමේට්ස් දෙන්න පුළුවන්, සප්ලිමන්ටරි දෙන්න පුළුවන්. අපිත් කියන්න පුළුවන් රටේ ආරක්ෂාව තර කරන නිසා ඕන තරම් වියදම් කරපළා කියලා. හැබැයි ඕකේ এডুকেෂන් එක ඩෙවලොප් වෙන පාත් එක අපිට පේන්නේ නැහැ. එතකොට ප්‍රධානම පසල් එක මට තියෙන්නේ මේ තත්ත්වයේ යටතේ මේක ආණ්ඩුව දැනුවත්මද කරන්න කියන කාරණේ තමයි මට තියෙන්නේ. අද ලෝකයේ වෙනකොටත් මේ තියෙන විෂම ආර්ථික දේශපාලන ප්‍රතිපත්ති වල ප්‍රතිඵලයක් විදිහට ආදායම් බෙදී යාමේ විෂමතාවය වගේ දේවලුත් මතුවලා තියෙනවා. එවැනි තත්ත්වයකදී අධ්‍යාපනයේ අර කියන එන්ලයින්මන්ට් සහ ඉගලිටේරියන් අප්‍රෝච් එකෙන් එළියට අරගෙන එයා තමුන්ට කැමති විදිහට හසුරවන්න ගත්තොත් අර මම කිව්ව විදිහටම අති බහුතරයක් නිකං සහතිකවලට අධ්‍යාපනයේ තියෙන යාන්තම් මිනිසු බවට පත් කරයි වෙනම එලිට් ගෲප් එකක් හදලා විශාල සමාජ ප්‍රශ්නයකුත් මේක ඇතුලේ නිර්මාණය කරන්න තියෙනවා. ඒ නිසා අපි ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍රවාදී රටක් එන්නේ කාරණා සාකච්ඡා කරමු. මෙන්න මේක තමයි මේකේ තියෙන්නේ. එහෙමනම් අපි මහ ජනතාව කියනවා ඒකට ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ. අපිට ඕනේ එහෙම එකක් තමයි. ඔබීඩියන්ට් කෙනෙක් ඕනේ, කන්ෆර්මිස්ට් කෙනෙක් ඕනේ. ප්‍රශ්න කරන්න, තර්ක කරන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. අදටත් අපි කතා කරනවා ළමයි කියොත් හැකියාවක් නැහැ, දක්ෂතා නැහැ කියලා. ඇත්තටම අරන් බලපුවාම එහෙනම් ඒ ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා. එහෙම කියන සිස්ටම් එක ඇතුළෙම accountantලා engineersලා ලුගුවට ආවට පස්සේ ඒගොල්ලන්ට උගන්වනවා ethics උගන්වන්න ගන්නවා. අපි කතා කරන so called meritocrats ලාට නේ. ඇත්තට මේ ethics තියෙන්න ඕනේ මේ පළවෙනි පන්තියේ ඉඳලම. එතනයි හදන්නට ඕනේ. දැන් මෙතනින් පැන්නොත් මේ militarization එකට commodification එකට ගියොත් කවදාක්වත් public ethics, social ethics, professional ethics එන්නේ නැහැ. එහෙනම් මුදල් මත තීරණය කරන මෙන්න මේ වගේ divide society එකක් නැති බැරි එක පැත්තක, පුළුවන් එක පැත්තක තියෙන මේ class ගැටුමක් එක්ක යන distorted society එකට තමයි යන්න තියෙන්නේ. ඉතින් අපිට ඒකට තමයි මේ apparatus එක මේ KDU බණට උදව් වෙන්නේ කියන එක මගේ තර්කය. ඉතින් අපි එහෙම කැමතිද නැද්ද කියන තර්කය තමයි ගෙනෙන්නට ඕනේ. ඉන්නේ පුළුවන් තරම් මේ තොරතුරු ගන්න මම විශේෂයෙන් ආරාධනාවක් කරනවා මේකට සම්බන්ධ වෙච්ච සෑම කෙනෙකුටම මේ පනත මේ කිව්ව විදියට මේ සියලුම දෙයක් කියවලා අධ්‍යාපනයේ පරමාර්ථය අවශ්‍යතාවය කියන එකත් එක්ක සංසන්දනය කළා ඔබ ස්වාධීන තීරණයකට එන්නේ ඒක තමයි වඩාත්ම ඩෙමොක්‍රටික් සොලියුෂන් එක කියලා. බොහොමත්ම ස්තුතියි ප්‍රොෆෙසර් සිරිමල්.
Thank you. Thank you. That was Dr. Anil Jayanta Fernando, senior lecturer from the University of Sri Jayawardenepura. I take a couple of minutes because I'm not going to speak that much about the KDU bill because the previous all three speakers focus on the KDU bill as well as the implications. Only a couple of points I want to raise just as raising some of those points to look around. Actually, I have seen defense universities, and although the term militarization, military university, that term is used widely, and also about commoditization or challenge to free education. And in fact, there are various, I can raise reservations about the terms that are being used to talk about this KDU bill. But I'm not sure whether militarization is the term that is used, but that is, I'm sure that is defense. And what I have seen even in many other countries around us and Western European countries and everywhere there are defense academies as well as defense universities. And also I have seen the vice chancellor or the president or the CEO of these defense universities. In most of the cases, they have come from the same background, defense backgrounds. The higher ranks officers of the military forces, and with some education, of course, with both the professional experience as well as with academic qualifications. And I have seen that in many other countries. So this just a small thing that we need to look at. This is not this is not only a case of Sri Lanka, but in many other countries all over the world. And also I want to talk about a little bit before my main point, that is actually beyond the KDU bill. I also want to talk about this commoditization or the loss of free education or free living education and so on. I remember when I was doing my master's program in Western European Social Science Institute and International Institute, so that there were students from all over the world, from American continent, from Europe, from Asia and Africa, from Latin America, from everywhere. So that was my first-hand experience in starting my master's program at that time, many years ago. I was at that time, just like many other Sri Lankans, we proudly say that we have free education in our country. And nobody understood this. And then some of them asked, what do you mean by free education? And then as Dr. Anil also rightly mentioned about it, actually it is not that the education does not have a cost, but it can be received free. But however, as Dr. Sujata also mentioned, that we are talking about the free education of less than 10% of the people who are eligible to receive that education. Less than 10%. And we all talk about free education of this less than 10% and forgetting more than 90% of the students of the same age cohort and without even looking at what happens to them. And the major point that has been raised against fee-learning education is actually it is a blow to the, it is the end of free education, thinking that it is going to be limited to the class that is that can afford to have that kind of a fee-learning education. No, it has never been anywhere in the world. Although they have the education, the universities, they have charged, they are charging money from the students, and in some countries they charge higher amount from foreign students and lower amount from local students, and they have also designed various mechanisms to take care of those who cannot afford to pay. And even in Sri Lanka, as Dr. Sujata also mentioned, and I have seen there are some research studies have been done on this in this area. And the people who have received most of the people, those who have received the benefit of free education, not the lower class, not the lower class. So there are issues actually in free education also, and we need reforms, we need to improve this, and it is not, we shouldn't take it as granted, and that is our system, free education, and we need to look at the weaknesses of the same system, and also we should undertake reforms continuously. There is no end to reforms in any area, not only in education, in any of the area. Education is one of the important areas where we need reforms, and I think throughout our presentations we understood that point. Okay, now I'm coming to my main argument. I think it was in 2010, 11, 12 years ago, I read this election manifesto. And then when the party and the leaders, those who presented that election manifesto, that was in 2010, when they came to power, that election manifesto was transformed into a policy document on the basis of the election manifesto. One of the important point section there was the education sector. In fact, I admired even at that time, and I should compliment that idea, that concept, which came out from that policy document, that Sri Lanka should be an international hub in our education. I am sure it was particularly about higher education. Sri Lanka should develop as an international hub in higher education. What a wonderful concept was that. We know that. Now imagine now from 2010 up to now, more than 10 years passed. And if you took that initiative at that time and undertook necessary reforms, by this time we have gone substantial, we have done substantial amount of work, and we have gone little further in realizing this particular objective and becoming Sri Lanka an international hub for higher education. Now but anyway, unfortunately, we haven't done anything in that particular area. That's a different issue why we didn't do that. But what do we need as fundamental requirements to make Sri Lanka an international hub in higher education? And during this 10-year period, or in the recent past, we have seen that even in some of our South Asian neighboring countries, such as even Bangladesh and Nepal, these countries were moving in that direction. In fact, about 20 years ago, India education was quite restricted, and even India has relaxed it significantly, so that there have been a lot of private initiatives come up. And in fact, the concept private is also largely misunderstood. Why it is misunderstood? We know that in the Western countries, in the USA, in Japan, most of the universities that we are talking about as private, they are not private, they are non-profit organizations. In fact, most of them initiated by the Christian seminaries in the Western countries and in the United States. Those high-rank universities, today we talk about Harvard and Princeton, they were Christian seminaries at that time. They transformed into universities and then became the #1 top-ranked universities in the world today. And in the Western Europe, it is the case. And in Japan, it is the case. In Japan, because it is a Buddhist country, the Buddhist temples have initiated a lot of universities there in addition to the state universities. But for some reasons, I believe that is the government policies as well as some restrictions on the other side also. In Sri Lanka, we haven't seen that initiative so far. So those are the kind of universities that we talk about as private today from the Western countries. It's not that they are guided by the profit model. However, the point is that this concept that internationalization of our education system, which means actually our higher education system is rather localized. We don't talk about it. In fact, one of the slogans I have seen against the KDU bill also, the quality of education is in danger because of this bill. But the quality of education has already been deteriorating. If we ask our previous scholars who studied in our university system, in the Peradeniya University was established at that time, those who passed from that university, and they might talk about how competitive those university education system at that time. In fact, recently I read about the teaching economics, that is my subject in the Sri Lankan university system, about its history. And when I look at the academic staff at that time, there were many foreign staff members serving in Peradeniya and then later in Colombo University, teaching economics and other social science subjects as well as other subjects. And most of those professors are from UK and from India and also other countries as well. But today, how many foreign professors do we find teaching in our university? How many foreign students do we find in studying in our universities without exporting education and without importing education? Put it in another way, without exporting knowledge and without importing knowledge. You don't export knowledge without inputs from imports, so that both are important. And if you don't do that substantially and significantly over the years, and then you become rather localized. In fact, there are better Sri Lankan terms to explain this phenomena, that the unfortunate situation that we have come to exist today. Now, that is the main requirement to make Sri Lankan education is internationalized. Now, what is to my understanding, the major weaknesses in Sri Lankan education system is lack of exposure. Lack of exposure. Of course, there are a couple of academic staff members who have foreign training, but they also, as Dr. Anil rightly mentioned, they get stuck when they come into the system. And how to remove this boundary line, and where they get stuck, they get interlocked, our academics. In fact, it is substantial part of the problem is the regulatory mechanism and the University Grant Commission. University Grant Commission has a better role, to my understanding, has its role is even at higher level, at policy level, at research level, at evaluating the students' quality, evaluating academic quality, evaluating the international ranking system and preparing benchmarks for the in our university system, so that they can increase competition among our universities. So my point is actually individual universities, they should have the autonomy, management and financial autonomy. We can still maintain our free education. How do we do that? We give that money to the student, not to the university. Then give the choice of the university also to the student. But still the government can support the universities. How? There can be a couple of criteria to determine government support, the government grants. And one thing is performance. So there may be performance-based grant. Another thing should be development grant, and there should be grants for the purpose of development. So this is the way that the system should be reformed to have a better education. I have no time to describe this in detail. My last point that I want to highlight is actually, I talk about the port city at that time and why port city has a different set of rules and regulations, because even the policymakers understand that the rules and regulations that are effective in this, the general setup, is not working for investment and business operations and to become a competitive business enclave in this country, which means actually port city is designed, the bill is designed to make it a better and more efficient system. In the same way, I asked the question that why not we get those good regulations from the port city bill and implement it all over the country. In the same way, today I should ask the same thing. There are good elements in the KNDU bill as well. And why not we get all these good quality points there and then implement for all our universities to have a better university education system, autonomous university education system, and to establish an international hub for higher education in this country. With that remark, I would like to wind up my few points I wanted to highlight, and we will move on to the Q&A session. We have about 25 minutes. I have seen a lot of comments coming to Q&A chat boxes as well as yes, Q&A as well as chat boxes. Let me go through some of them. I think some of these
Can I answer one? Somebody asked me a specific question. The dean of
yes,
the Defense
Dipti,
University.
do you have anything?
May I answer that?
Yeah, sure.
Silman? Yes. Yeah, it's a very good point that I called it a military university, and actually the name is a defense university. That's I stand corrected. But the problem is, if it's a defense university, not a military university, then I have a problem with the structure. Defense university, we expect defense strategy. Defense, what should our defense in our country should be like? Can the military, something institution run by the military, can they decide? For example, let me give an example. So I would come up with the argument, the research project, that we don't need jet fighters. We don't need the army. Why do we get ready to fight our own people? What we need is to defend a 200-kilometer sea that's around us. What we need is a strong coast guard. I mean, will that kind of question come from the present military, this university? Defense university, I think if you put the word, it's a defense university, it's not a military university, then I think I have a problem with the structure. If it's a military university or a military academy, I mean, university, you can keep the name, but if it's a military academy, I think the structure is fine. If it calls itself a national defense university, I mean, maybe we are just, just arguing with words here, semantics here, but I think one thing is, if it's a defense, supposed to be a university that studies defense issues, No, I don't think this is a good structure. I think it should be, we can call it defense university, but in practice, it could be military university is fine. And I think getting into civilian space, there were a lot of questions about people saying, you know, but the children, the students, they're fine, they're creative. I'm sure they are. I know a lot of them personally. ප්‍රශ්නය මේක aberration එකක් මේක bypass එකක්. ඇයි අපිට මේ defense enclave එකට යන්න ඕන private education එකක් ගන්න? මේක විහිළුවක්. අපිට defense enclaves හැමතැනම හදනවාද private education වලට? ළමිට අධ්‍යාපනයේ නිදහස ලබා ගන්න. දැන් බලන්න අපිට මේ ඩොක්ටර් ආනන්ද කිව්වා education කියන්නේ collectively own වෙන්න ඕන, egalitarian වෙන්න ඕන, invisible hand එකක් තියෙන්න බෑ, elite groups ඉන්න බෑ කියලා. නමුත් අපිට වෙලා තියෙන්නේ අපේ උසස් අධ්‍යාපනයේ elite group එකක් හැදිලා තියෙනවා 7.8ක්. කොහෙන්ද ඒගොල්ලෝ ආවේ? ඒගොල්ලෝ ආවේ මේ විභාගයක් තියෙනවා. සම්පූර්ණ මේ A level කියලා විභාගයක් තියෙනවා. කවුද මේ විභාගය සෙට් කරන්නේ? මේ elite කාණ්ඩයමයි. මේ invisible hand එකක් තියෙනවා මෙතන. මේ elite කාණ්ඩය හිතන්නේ අපි වගේ අපේ ළමයි අපි වගේ අය තව හදන්න ඕන කියලා. ඒගොල්ලෝ මේ විභාග හදනවා. ඒ අසාධාරණ බැරිය එකක් දාලා ඒ අසාධාරණ බැරිය එකෙන් පයින් බැරියට කියනවා sorry මේ කට්ටියට විතරයි. අපි ඇත්තටම elite group එකක් හදලා මේක egalitarian නෙවෙයි. egalitarian වෙන්න නම් අපි අලුත් විදිහට හිතන්න ඕන. අලුත් පළමු දේ අපි නිදහස කියන කරන් සම්පූර්ණ නිර්වචන නිදහස කියන්නේ අධ්‍යාපනයේ නිදහස. ඊළඟ අපි විතර බලන්න හිතන්න කොහොමද අපි. හරි. ඒක නිසා මම කියන්නේ අර උත්තරයට මම උත්තර දුන්නේ ඇත්තටම national defense එකෙන් තියෙනවා. අනිත් එක මම ටිකක් වැඩිපුරත් ගියා. අනිත් ප්‍රශ්නවලට උත්තර දුන්නා. මේ ළමයි ක්‍රියේටිව් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් ප්‍රශ්නය මේ enclave වල ඇයි ඕගොල්ලන්ට ඉගෙන ගන්න වෙන්නේ? තව enclaves හදන්න කීයක් හදන්නද ලංකාවේ? කියලා මම ප්‍රශ්න කරා.
Thank you, Dr. Sujata. And yes, I don't think there is any disagreement about this, the issue that you are highlighting. There is a need for overall reforms in the education sector. But according to you, there are these bypass systems. And also there is a question that how feasibility, how viable it is, and who's going to take the leadership in reforming the entire education system. That is another issue that requires a lot of attention, because I know that it's a politically sensitive issue. There's also some of the questions, and I'm going to highlight key points there. I want to ask, this is from Dr. Bhagya Senaratna. I want to ask what the other academics are doing to improve the education system in these universities. She's asking about other universities, I'm sure. And anyone, well, Dr. Anil maybe, or Dr. Sisira maybe, what the other academics are doing to
yeah, I did not read the question. Can you?
Yeah, Dr. Anil, yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, can you repeat the question, please?
I want to ask what the other academics are doing to improve the education system in these universities. So I think, well, if I am going to read the whole question, this is a little long, but I the gist of that question, because there is a change in the KDU bill, according to there's a change there, and then what are the other universities are doing?
Yeah, that's what, like, so it's a good question. So that's why it is like, instead of just even arguing on the merits and demerits of this KDU, first of all, we need to talk about the basic structure of the education system. So according to your question, so what are we doing, like academics and all those things? So when we take the stakeholders within an education system, especially the one that I really promote, the public education, like the whole responsibilities, just implementing, facilitating, and materializing these things are with the state. So we are only one. Of course, from our side, we individually, collectively takes lots of measures. I know personally the how hard it is for us to change even a syllabus or introduce new course, which really question this problematic issues. Is like, whereas new things are brought in, very difficult. So for example, I can the quote, like even in economics, even Professor Sirimal also may say, in economics, so one of the debates we have heard about called two Cambridge University debate about the capital controversy. So this capital controversy cannot be included in, I don't know, so that your situation in your university is there in difficult to include, so that allows us to debate instead of believing only on one aspect, thinking that capital is something that produces profit, it should be equally treated in this way. This was heavily debated in 1970s, and alternative approach was given. So what I'm just telling is, individually, what we can do and change the system without having power, because our power depends on our territories little, but we are doing it. So enormous power is coming from the other side. So including those who have the main holding, contrary to this. So actually they are knowingly or unknowingly moving towards a market society. That is my major argument. If you do not talk about these things, what kind of education do we need? Who takes the responsibility? And so whether there should be a kind of a good consultative process, then we may end up with so many other things. We may debate unnecessarily. We might take the eyes off the ball. So that is one of the biggest question I have. So just to clarify the difference between a market economy and market society. In a market economy, it's all right, that is a tool where all the goods and services produced are traded, whatever the mechanism using. But when it comes to market society, things that cannot be commodified, including education, like health, environment, society, civic rights, social values, so many things. So that is how now big things are coming. Even someone just pointed here. So why not we take money from those who have? So that's also there in the world as well. Why not we take money from those who have and provide the facility like intake, take them into the university system and provide the education. Use that money to give scholarships to others. So then it is a debate whether it should be based on money or based on merit. So actually, unfortunately, in Sri Lankan education system, including academics and all those things, actually we are not debating on the issue. We are debating on causes and some unnecessary things. Actually, debate should not be on KDU. Debate should be on the education. What education do we need? What we are really doing it? Whether we are taking steps
I
and
think,
what is the responsibility individual
yes,
and
well understood, Dr. Anil.
Yes,
Right?
thank you so much. I just gave a bit long answer.
Excuse me.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Lakshman.
There are so many people who have raised questions. Therefore, please
I know.
limit the time taken by one response.
Of course. Right. Thank you, Mr. Lakshman. I will call you back in a little while. There is one more question actually. Well, Dr. Anil's answer actually raised an important point. And so you think that if the universities are released from the clutches of the UGC, that will be for the improvement of their quality. What do you think, Dr.
Yeah, in a way, like it depends. That is what, like with the given structure. So yeah, with the given structure, if the universities are given the freedom or release from the clutches of UGC, yes, we may debate. It like a freedom would be there. But again, so how powerful we are, like that's what I just told you. Even the other forces that pressurize us to move towards the market society, that would be problematic. So that is
right.
The awareness would be all right.
Yeah. Now I have a question actually to answer any longer, but should we bring KDU under UGC umbrella or should we move the other way around?
Can I respond to that? Because
yes, Dr. Sisira, yes.
Now your question, Srimal, is that
short answer. Very short answer.
Yeah, your question is that whether we should bring KNDU under the purview of the Grants Commission. Yeah, but my issue with the Grants Commission is Grants Commission has gradually become a super university. It's kind of a bureaucratic structure, and now Grants Commission, in my view, has become a serious obstacles to the development of university education in this country. I think instead of bringing this new university, KNDU, under UGC, we should reduce the powers of the UGC, and at the same time, we should create an alternative structure, especially for accreditation. And also, some of the powers that the UGC has taken from the university should be given back. If you read the 1978 Act, you will find the UGC, when it was created under that, is not the UGC that we have today, right? 1985 amendments changed the university, the structure of the commission. And today, as Anil said, I agree with Anil on that point, the universities do not have the freedom to even to introduce new courses. But at the same time, don't now it's the same argument that we are bringing against the KNU bill. We say that KNU bill restrict the university, that university introducing civilian thinking because the administration is from the military or from the defense sector. But even without that, today in other universities under the commission, there is no freedom to introduce new courses. It takes a long process, and the decision is taken by the UGC by hand-picked academics who always frequent committees. There are no the new faces coming to UGC standing committees, for example. So I think there is nothing. There is only little difference between the commission managing the university system and what would happen if if this new bill come into effect and establish a new university under the Ministry of Defense. So I don't think the solution is bringing the new university under the commission. Instead, what we need to do is to have an alternative structure. That is, in other words, we should have in this country more than one accreditation agency. We should have accreditation for example, medical studies, perhaps separate from legal studies. We should have institutional accreditation as well as program accreditation. We don't have these different alternatives in this country, and UGC takes all decisions, and it's like a dictatorship and a bureaucratic control from the top by kind of a super university that existed before 1978. So those are issues that we need to talk about.
Yeah, okay, right. Thank you, Dr. Cicera. And there are actually a couple of questions, and some are personal questions, but they also indicate the problem of our higher education. Somebody is raising the question that he has done a foreign degree from Saudi Arabia and then asking to and attempted to enter the university Peradeniya and was rejected. And so those are issues. And somebody is also asking, do we have to pay money to go to KDU? All these questions actually, although they are personal, they point to a very important fundamental problems and weaknesses of our education system. I know that we cannot answer those questions right now. There is another one. It is about free education, and Mr. Kannangara originally envisaged as free education, and that is also, I think, a misconception, because free education, as Mr. Kannangara initiated at that point, the university education was not there, and he himself mentioned that there it came at the 92nd meeting, as I remember, overnight. Probably Dr. Sujata might remember this. It fall on our head like a brick into their one of their meetings, and that's how the free higher education came into our free education agenda. And then Dean.
You're quite right, Sirman. People are just, it was all about school education. This was, and you can see in the comments, there are several people wrote dissenting comments. It was just thought at that time, you didn't think about massification of higher education. Then, yeah, it was just not thought out. It was just, you're exactly right. It's in the comments in the Kannanga report.
Yeah.
It's available on the internet. If you search for it, I have uploaded the whole report.
It was a brick fall on their head.
Right.
They mentioned. And what Dean is asking, what about the indoctrination of our university students by parties with and why do, of course, we know that KDU doesn't have that problem. It has discipline, and discipline is important. I really appreciate that discipline in all of the universities. There are two. Our universities are too politicized too. And one important question is also asked by the dean, and why don't the state university respect the right to free education of all those who are qualified, including those who attend international schools? And international school students have no right to enter into the state universities now. Anyone like to comment on this?
Sirma, can I?
Okay, right. Dr. Sisira, yes, go ahead.
I think this is where we need to make a distinction between free education and freedom of education. I remember you also mentioning that.
Correct.
And even Sujata, what this country is doing is, in the name of free education, what you are doing is actually destroying the freedom of education. And the 90% of students who get qualified to come to the university, they are deprived of their chance to get a degree because there are no places. And we are not willing to go into non-state sector because we think fee-living education on the one hand, and also non-state sector sponsoring education or doing higher education is against the principle of free education as they see, which is actually not free education, but education without charging tuition. In this country, what we have is not free education. Free education is a broader concept, which actually in the name of free education, we have prevented real free education in this country. That is one. And also maybe if you could give me another minute.
Yeah, sure.
Direct this question to Sujata. Sujata mentioned that military university is an oxymoron. May I ask Sujata, what about religious universities? Universities are supposed to be secular, but there are universities managed by religious bodies, or what we call denominational universities. Maybe it's Jesuits, Catholics, or even Mormons. They have their strict code of ethics that are not really secular, but still they manage. They manage their universities and they impart good education. So in that sense, how could you call this is an oxymoron? If this is an oxymoron, even religious universities should also be oxymoron. Wouldn't that be?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Sisira. Yeah, actually, but religious, present day universities evolved out of religious institutions.
Yes, I agree.
So I think it's been about 500 years of evolution and change. And I think even if you take Aquinas College, I think there's a certain, the university culture is there. I don't think it is impacted by the religious nature as much. So it's been a transition, but the military university is a new concept, I think. Military universities, we've had military academies, and I think Sri Lanka can have a fine military academy. And I think even this bypass system, anyway, to answer your question, no, I think the religious institutes have coexisted with the universities. They have in fact evolved out of the universities. I don't see a problem. I think a Sharia university is an issue. Sharia university, Islamic universities we've had. That's interesting. I haven't thought about it. We should look at Islamic universities. What happened in the universities in the Islamic world during the heyday of Islam? That's an interesting one.
Actually, that's my question. The point I want to raise now, the religious universities have evolved, as you say. Now they coexist, religious ideology and secularism. And a military or the defense university like this, it's a new concept. Couldn't that also evolve? Because with civilians interacting with military. Now what we are saying is military interacting with civilians will lead to militarization of civil society. And if we allow this to continue and civilians interacting with military universities or defense universities, military personnel, wouldn't the opposite happen? Like military the civilian norms
I guess
becoming part of
I guess
military
even
norms.
the I guess even the civil students, they might have better.
No, I'm just raising this issue.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, if
Please, there are so many people who have raised questions. Please,
Yeah,
please,
okay, yes.
please
As per
mention.
army, there's somebody Nimali civilians according to their acts, and is it valid within the university as well? Because university system has a different setup, and there are teachers and students, and teachers can, I think they have certain way of punishing the students. And is it governed by the military acts or university acts? So if somebody knows the answer, you can respond to that question as well.
Yeah. What was the first
I think I think
Mil-
it's only the teachers are not governed by the military code of discipline. It's
Right.
only the military personnel attached to that university, and that specifically says the disciplinary actions with regard to the civilian personnel and teachers will not be governed by the military code. It's in the act if you read it.
like,
yeah,
I would like to just give a little answer to
Yes,
one
go ahead.
question which has been asked, especially on a concept that I highlighted, that is the indoctrination. Maybe it is mentioned that Dean, maybe from the KDU, I do not know from which university, one of our faculty. And like the question is, how about the things, these kind of aspects of indoctrination just seen from different political parties, influencers, so any other, so many things. General criticisms are there about university education. Actually, I think that the concept what I mentioned, indoctrination, may have been misunderstood. So it is the indoctrination is the mainstream ideology of providing education. It has nothing to do with other elements who involve or engage in education. It is the government and other apparatus and the people. So that is the problem we are talking about. But actually, it is again the responsibility of the government and higher education, UGC and other authorities to create a conducive environment within the university to have a better education. So my main concern is, so when we take any decision, there should be a democratic process, consultative process. So otherwise, we do not, things come all of a sudden. I can highlight one more thing, just especially after COVID, the government appointed a special task force to think of the issues and how best we come out in the education. I was appointed as a one member. I gave my comments even. So after that, I didn't know, even I was not communicated what happened. So with respect to such a situation prevailing in Sri Lanka, especially in the education system, how do we expect that such a proper consultation has taken place in deciding this KDU and all this? This is the problem that I am highlighting. It is all right, no matter what, how, and in what ways, it better we argue and the debate to have something democratic, consultative process. So that is missing.
Thank you, Dr. Anil. I think time is running out, and there are so many questions, and all questions are about free education, the problems of free education, and also the compared to that the new KNDU bill and the opportunities that it has brought about in our education, higher education system. But anyway, I don't have the enough time to take up all these important issues, but this is also an eye-opener, as somebody has mentioned a comment there, eye-opener that we need to continue with this discussion and then clarifying where we are in international context, our education system, our higher education system. And as I mentioned at the beginning, our higher education system problems, some of them are actually coming from our school education system, so that you cannot take it in isolation. One of the important issues that we have seen is that our university students are 3 to 4 years older than their counterparts in other countries, university students in other countries. And the problem starts from school education. And we need to look at these fundamental issues, fundamental problems that we have encountered, we have developed today because of this process of being isolation, and we should have a breakthrough very soon, and otherwise we will fall down from the international competition. And I am sure already we are halfway through there. And with that remark, I want to invite Mr. Lakshman Sirivardhana, the executive, the managing director of the Vimansa initiative. Lakshman, over to you for concluding remarks, taking 2-3 minutes.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much. And let me first of all thank the eminent panel with diverse views and very dynamic presentations and never-ending discussions. I think it should have been a panel discussion to some extent. We will try it again, and we would be more thankful, grateful for the participants who have been very active, and we are getting the largest number of questions. Of course, everything cannot be mentioned, but there was one particular suggestion by KDU Brigadier Academics, right? Academic and something, that why don't you visit us and see how KDU is run?
By the way, I have visited KDU and I have also given speeches there at the KDU.
Very impressive.
Quite impressed by that.
No, we are asking these questions about the university education. Unfortunately, I don't know whether you all give the sufficient focus on the terrible deterioration of the academic standard of the academics, as well as a result of that their products. From 1970s, I have seen. Then Peradeni had only a couple of professors in economics or particular subject. Now there are plethora of them. What is the standard? When the government wants to identify a person for a very prominent position, particularly in arts and certain commerce and that kind of subject, you can't find one. Such a deterioration. Where is this? Unless you are frogs in the well, you should be able to look at yourself. How many of you are published in the in reputed academic journals? In 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, maybe 90s by the time evaporating, there were things like that. Anyway, more important is why KNDU bill is forwarded. Rightly, Sujata said, bypass operation, because you can't change anything. If you try to reform the whole structure, they will be flooded with politically driven. 3%, 4% of the country drive the 90% of the students to the street. Talk very nonsensical slogans, carrying very nonsensical slogans. This is the situation. Therefore, they are trying to carve out various segments, as Srimal suggested. Both city was a similar outcome. You can't change the whole thing. Therefore, let's address some critical areas. But anyway, I think this discussion today brought forward, I would rather say, 4 different kind of academic intellectuals talking about completely different approaches to the same issue. It is great. I think one of the most successful webinars that we ever conducted, and it should have been a panel discussion looking at the way our learned panelists or speakers responded. We will try it again. Anyway, one thing I can tell you, we discuss as academics. Api කරන්න නැති එකම දේ තමයි ශිෂ්‍යයන්ගේ දෙමව්පියන්ගෙන් ඇහුවොත් ශිෂ්‍යයන්ගේ දෙමව්පියන්ගෙන් ඇහුවොත් KDU එක පෙන්නලා ඒකේ ළමයි හැසිරෙන ඉන්න හැටි පෙන්නලා ඒකේ රැගින් නැති එක සහ ඩිසිප්ලින් එක පෙන්නලා පාරවල් වලට ළමයි දක්කන්න නැති එක පෙන්නලා අනිත් විශ්වවිද්‍යාල එකක් හරි පෙන්නලා ඉවරලා කොයි එකටද ඔයාගේ දරුවා යවන්න ඕනේ කියලා ඔබ හිතන්නේ කෝකටයි කියලා දෙමව්පියන් තීරණය කරයි. දෙමව්පියෝ තමයි මාකට් එක. දෙමව්පියෝ තමයි තීරණය කළ යුත්තේ. එහෙම හිතෙන්නේ නැද්ද ඔයගොල්ලන්ට? මම මේ ගැන කියන්නේ නැහැ. බලමු දෙමව්පියෝ ගානකට දීලා අපේ දුව අතෙන්ට ගියොත් සේෆ්. අතන අපේ පුතා එතෙන්ට ගිහිල්ලා එනකොට ගෙදර හිටපු කොල්ලකින් තියෙන සදාචාරාත්මක වැලියුස් ටිකක් ඉතුරු වෙලා තියෙයි කියලා හිතන්නේ නැද්ද? මේ බොරුව කරන්න එපා. තමන්ගේ දූ දරුවන් ඒ තැන් වලට යවන උදවිය කියන එක විතරක් කියමින් මේවා විමර්ශන ඉනිෂියේටිව් එකේ අදහස් වලට වඩා මගේ අදහස් කියලා හිතා ගන්න 1969 ඉඳලා පරිහානියට යන පෙරදිනිය විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයේ I was crying from my heart to see how declining quality of academics and as a result of that the rest is happening. What is this UGC? We never had a UGC. You can have several independent universities within the government structure. Now you have created the nothing is being achieved. KDU must be taken out of this. At least the bypass will be a bypass, meaningful. Thank you very much and hope to see you again. We are planning next on the renewable energy, and it will be followed by several other very interesting subjects, including poverty, targeted poverty reduction, and probably something else on the green concept and the architectural designs of Colombo Port City. Thank you very much. Thank you once again. Let's see you all again.
Thank you, Lakshman. Well said. And over to you, Deepthi.
You're correct.
Okay, so yes.
Yeah, thank you very much to all the panelists and for joining us today. And thank you very much to all the participants for all the enthusiasm, such an enthusiasm. I think we haven't seen so many questions flowing in our other webinars. So I'm sure everybody liked, the topic and